Which of these would be best to have in the case of a societal collapse? Today I'm talking copper bullion rounds and why I think something as simple as a design could mean a successful barter exchange or not. Hello fellow mutants. If you've been following my channel for a while, and you've no doubt heard me talk about using copper rounds for barter of items that are around the $2 to $4 mark by today's standards. This is a good target, I think. While silver and gold can cover pricier transactions, I don't think many silver bugs would want to give up a silver round that was $25 to $30 before the collapse for a bottle of water or a dollar store can opener. And for those who stashed away gold, having no choice but to resort to such a transaction would be a major emotional blow. Not so much for a copper round, which you can get for around $1.50 at the right site or during certain sales. So let's say you decide it's worth the investment to have about 100 copper bullion rounds on hand. That's not an insignificant investment. Let's face it, after a societal collapse in a world where barter trades are made based on a perception of value, not everyone is going to recognize a copper round. I've given them away as extra tips in restaurants on top of the normal tip, for example, and while I always get a positive response, I also get the "what is this?" frequently. The good news is that many seem to think the rounds are worth more than a silver bullion bug who looks down his nose at copper, and I even had a guy tell me, "I'm going to keep this. This is going to be worth something someday." All that said, in order to have confidence in the barter value of the copper rounds I purchase, I want them to meet a few criteria to ensure I can successfully make good trades if the time ever comes. These are my rules for good barter bullion. First up, no-nonsense designs are best. Save the special leaf design for a t-shirt at the local vape shop. Also, if it looks like a Chuck E. Cheese token with cartoonish characters, or if it expresses some kind of joke in the design, your barter partner may consider your copper round as a joke, and a worthless token. If you want to collect novel-looking designs because they make you happy or you like to give them away as gifts, I'm not by any means saying that you shouldn't. But, for the purposes of post-collapse barter, they are not at the top of my list. No face value or date. Those of you familiar with silver coins will note that some have a dollar face value that legitimizes them as legal tender, but the face value is usually far less than the cost of obtaining the coin. I think this breeds confusion or opportunism during a trade that would not be in your favor. Basically, someone saying, "Hey, well, it only says $1 on it," for example. Similarly, I think a copper round should have no dollar value listed, especially if the value of the metal exceeds the written face value to avoid confusion. The exception, I think, is if the coin has a written $5 to $10 value, which could play into the impression that it is worth more, but not so much more that it becomes a joke, like $1,000. Though, with the way inflation is going these days, I also don't want to have a printed date on the coin, again, to avoid any confusion on what it is that I'm bartering. While I might be able to keep my copper rounds pristine and clean today, there's no guarantee that they won't end up tarnished and worn after SHTF, and an old copper round with a date printed on it might begin to resemble an old large penny with enough handling, and even if it is a vintage penny, a penny today has the image of being worth very little. Unless you're dealing with a coin collector, which again, I don't think people are taking into consideration when they collect coins, that in a barter situation, the person opposite of them is more than likely, in an emergency scenario, not going to know or appreciate the hobby. This is one reason I'm not big into junk silver dimes and the like for post-collapse barter. Though I certainly think it's a valid way to stack silver in the here and now. I don't want someone who is ignorant looking at what I'm offering as a dime, however, or having to rely on giving them a convincing enough history lesson on numismatics to prove that what I hold has a certain percentage of silver in it. Imagine that the person you could be bartering with is the guy down at the local plant nursery who watches professional wrestling in his off time, not your coin-collecting acquaintance you met on Reddit. Along the same line of logic, the design should be a serious-looking one that evokes the impression of government currency without too closely resembling the current government fiat, which could be significantly devalued after a societal and financial collapse. I would add to that the E pluribus unum and other United States of America type of lettering on the coin, or I should say copper bullion round, as being potentially problematic in a similar way. So I actually want to stay away from something that is a direct copy of modern coinage, even if the design strips away the monetary face value and dates. On the other hand, I do think that certain designs ride this line very well, especially if the design is so old that only numismatists, that's a word to wrap your mouth around, coin collectors, recognize the designs. A good example is the capped bust, or this Liberty head round. The design should have a crisp, professional look, and the details should be easily discerned. If it's an eagle, it should look like an eagle, not an emaciated chicken. While I usually like the Silver Shield mini mintage designs, there is one titled A Hero's Journey that is simply too detailed for its size in my opinion. A neat coin to look at through a lens, but not really suitable for barter because you can't really tell what's going on in the design at a glance. A copper round should have its pure copper content clearly displayed somewhere on the round. Even better if it somehow calls out the value of the metal. Second Amendment coin designs are very popular, but I'm not sure I'd want to make myself a target by advertising, correctly or incorrectly, that I have a massive cache of weapons somewhere by oversharing my political beliefs on a copper round during a trade. So those are out of my selection, unless I just want to collect them for my personal satisfaction or give them away to like-minded people who share my thoughts on the subject. There are several exceptions I can think of to these standards I'd set for my barter bullion. First is that I tend to think that having a variety of designs is a good idea. Even if I find my perfect favorite round design, it might not be appealing to every barter partner. So I might try to have a handful of go-to designs. The Liberty Head and Morgan Dollar style designs are classic and hard to go wrong with. And unlike the Buffalo Head design, which is also a classic, they evoke the image of anyone with experience in coins of a higher grade of currency. For example, a Platinum Eagle Liberty Head coin design rather than the Buffalo Head nickel. I want my barter partner to see the copper round design as something desirable, and subtle pushes like this could help. In essence, I'm saying go with something that looks generic but still maintains a professional design appeal while advertising loudly what it is, namely copper, and why it should be considered valuable. I apply this same approach to silver rounds for the most part, if you were wondering. And lastly, I really like this Bullion Not Bits safety in numbers 1 ounce copper round, though I don't own any of the specific design yet. It ticks off all the boxes with a good design calling out the copper content as a thing of value, real metal, real value. There are a few variations of this design which I do own on ammunition and food preps, but I think after the grid goes down, this message of Bullion Not Bits could be very well received while not exposing me as someone who has a bunker full of beanie weenies and freedom seeds. Especially after people have realized that the cash they had digitally in banks has evaporated into the ether, whether it be Bitcoin or a digital dollar. In past videos, I've made the argument for the utility of copper rounds, so you might wonder why I would care what design graces the front and back of a piece of copper bullion. If I'm going to hammer it into some other shape, why would it matter? Well, I see copper bullion round stacking as having two sides to it, pun intended, of course. One side is the barter potential after SHTF. The other is utility. So, given half my focus is on barter, I want to have something that is attractive and appealing for barter, even or perhaps especially to those who are not familiar with copper bullion rounds. I would probably stay away from Chinese designs, given geopolitical instability and events of today. I know this one might be touchy if any of you viewers have invested significant funds into gold or silver pandas, but I'm sure you can imagine that if things spin out of control, having what looks like the currency of the enemy of the moment might not be the best choice for roadside barter, or even especially after a societal collapse. At least not inside the USA. Chinese designs seem particularly prevalent in bullion round design, but similarly I would stay away from other designs of rival states, although I don't recall ever seeing Russian or Iran-themed copper bullion rounds. Again, this is not to say I wouldn't have a few here or there in my own collection to admire, but for tubes of rounds purchased as barter preps, I'm not going to go with Chinese designs. I will have a part 2 of this video in which I will share both design types that I think are appropriate for barter and those that aren't. These are from my own collection, so hope you like this video, and if so, please continue on over to the part 2. Well, that's all I have for today. Let me know in the comments what kind of copper round designs you like, or if you agree with my philosophy at all. Until next time, Copper Mutant, signing out.